The land where Englewood is today was once an area of swampy lands and oak forests. In 1840, a settler named Wilcox chartered the area and documented it with the land office of the city of Chicago. By 1852, railroad tracks were laid in the area to form a junction, and people began to call the area Junction Grove. The area was a site of scattered truck farms where Irish and German laborers worked. In 1865, the area was annexed into the town of Lake. Then, German and Irish immigrants began to work at the Union Stockyards. In 1868, Henry B. Lewis came to the area and changed the name to Englewood. Also in 1868, L. W. Beck donated a tract of 10 acres to make way for Cook County Normal School. In 1869, it opened as a college mainly for teachers. This prompted a middle-class subdivision to be platted near the school. After the Chicago fire of 1871, more Chicagoans moved to the area since their homes were destroyed. The population of Englewood grew, bringing public transportation, and Englewood was finally annexed in 1889. During the 1900s, Polish and other Eastern European immigrants came to the community. Irish immigrants continued to move to the area as well during the early 1900s through the 1920s. The 1930s saw a big boom in the neighborhood as the 63rd Street and Halsted Shopping Center was constructed. It quickly became the second busiest shopping area in the city. In 1934, the opening of the Sears store brought employment and revenue to the community. The Chicago Normal College closed in 1932, causing loss of employment and revenue for members of the community. Englewood became a cheaper place to rent and own property due to the Great Depression and the fact that World War II efforts caused a lack of materials needed to renovate deteriorating buildings. This attracted lower-income African Americans to move into the area in the 1940s. White flight in the area became highly prevalent in the 1950s as property values plummeted and revenue to the community shrank.
When we moved on the block, we were the third black family on the block, and the neighbors were so nice. They, brought things over, and in less than 6 months, in fact, less than 3 months, my mother came out and there was a big for sale sign on the neighbor's lawn. And my mother was not a crier. I never saw her cry about anything, but she teared up about that. Because this had been a woman who welcomed her and been very friendly. Never said she was moving. In less than a year, that block was, 99% African American.
Blacks did not live all over Englewood because there were not that many of them, and plus restrictive housing covenants would not allow blacks to just buy property and live anywhere at that time until 1966. Housing marches led by Dr. King and Chicago leaders, of which I was one of the people who invited Dr. King and his staff to Chicago in 1966 to assist the Coordinating Council of Community Organizations, of which my organization was one of them, in breaking down racial restrictions in housing.
And you add the white flight and the inability to buy those homes. So if you have people leaving and they're redlining to stop other people from buying them, be they black, white, or green, what do you have left? And what redlining was, that banks decided if you lived within a certain area, they were not going to give you a loan, period, end of story. And the book American Apartheid talks about that if you lived within a certain area, it didn't even have to be zip code, it could be in the area if it's closer to black people here, or if it's all black, they would not make you a loan.
The construction of the Dan Ryan Expressway caused more African Americans to move to Englewood after being displaced from other South Side communities. By the 1960s, the population of Englewood was 69% African American, and a decade later, it became 96% African American.
Another significant event was the rise of black male youth gangs. You note that the three major gangs, Devil's Disciples, which changed their name to just the Black Disciples, and later on in 1970 they changed their name to the Black Gangster Disciples, making it today probably one of the largest gangs in the country. And around 1967 to 68, I made contact with Barksdale, who put me in contact with a young man who lived about a block from me, Brother Harold Baskin, B-A-S-K-I-N, who just died 2 months ago, natural causes. And Harold belonged to two gangs, the Hustlers and the Disciples gang. And I got acquainted with him and got to respect him. Within 5 years, I was able to help him get his bachelor's degree in political science through University of Englewood at the Northeastern Illinois State University.
Englewood, it's a great neighborhood because it's great because I lived here all my life and I enjoy Englewood. Believe me, I enjoy like friends I've met, Joyce, Miss Porter, very few people. I've met everybody. I know just about everybody because I've had business here. I just love Englewood.
I have lived in Englewood all my life, and we lived on 61st and Carpenter. And then we stayed there until 1986, and then we moved here on Lomas, right off of Lomas. Okay, we had good times. When we was kids, we had the opportunity. We had a playground on Carpenter, and all the kids would meet up at the playground, and we would take our little radios and we'd dance and play in the park, go on the swings, the merry-go-round. We would play ball. We wouldn't have to worry about anything. Nobody bothered us because it was just like a family. It was like a unit. It was like a family.
By the 1970s, the neighborhood fell into deterioration as it was completely neglected by the city of Chicago. But the community never gave up hope. Sears and many of the shops then abandoned the 63rd and Halsted Street shopping area.
Englewood used to be a great place, but we had stores, every store. We didn't have to go downtown or go to Evergreen Plaza to do any shopping. Everything was right here in one location. You had Sears, you had Weeboats, you had Kresge's, you had a Walgreens that had a lunch counter, Kresge's which had a lunch counter. You had every type of shoe store that you could think of, men and women's clothing and shoes. You had everything here on 63rd and Halsted. Everything was in Englewood.
We had about 5 or 6 theaters. It was just like being downtown. And after they closed the Southtown Theater, I think that's when the neighborhood started changing, the Southtown Theater, because they had inside the theater, they had a pond with swans. They had a room where the parents that wanted to go to the movie could take the kids to this, like a nursery, and leave the kids there.
At the Englewood I grew up in, at the time there were approximately 100,000 people there. And 63rd and Halsted was the second largest business district to downtown Chicago.
By 2000, the population of Englewood dropped to 40,000 residents.
As my mind and heart is still on Englewood, we had 25 pastors that was on our board, but they wanted to develop something under Greater Grand Crossing called the Joint Organizing Effort. It was really called Project Joel. And so these 25 pastors said, there are things that we want to do. And because Chatham is kind of lined in the Englewood area, but it's not in the Englewood area, we have a concern about Englewood, Kennedy King College. So they wanted to see if they could work and organize themselves in a way that they would have enough power to move Washburn to city colleges. And of course, they worked to do that. And that happened. I'm so glad that even Josie Childs in her retirement was able to really work with the Know Your Chicago to tour Englewood. I wanted that to happen in 2012, but now it's happening now. So I'm so pleased to Know Your Chicago is doing what you said you were going to do. Thank you so much.